What's up, everybody? Bandit here for another Taco Tuesday. Now, as you may be able to see behind me, I did get my truck really cleaned up and it is looking spectacular. It looks like a brand new truck. Now, if you haven't really been keeping up with social media and everything else, you may not have noticed, but I really do use my truck for a lot of different purposes. Not only is it my daily driver, but it's also my work truck, rolling around on job sites, and I've also used it to help build a new deer blind. So it's been used a lot here in the past couple months, and it has been abused a little bit, but it is nice to have it all back and clean and shiny again. So if you can't tell by that acceleration, we're going to actually talk about the intake today. So several weeks ago, if you have been following the channel, you may have seen this video, but a viewer actually in Arizona sent me a cold air intake. It's actually a K&N Blackhawk series cold air intake, and he wanted my impressions on it. So I did an installation video, again, a few weeks ago. I believe it was the 66th Taco Tuesday video, if you need to look back and see it. But basically, he just wanted my impressions, and he sent it to me as a gift. So again, a huge thanks to him. I do really appreciate it. And over the past couple weeks, I have been able to get several tanks full of gas through the truck and really get my impressions of this new cold air intake. So we are going down the road about 60 miles an hour right now, and as you may be able to tell, there is very, very little sound. Really, if you're not on the throttle very hard and you're just kind of cruising, the truck is really quiet. I've had other cold air intakes in the past, never on the Tacoma, but on other vehicles, and there's a lot of drone. It's just sometimes you get a little bit of whistle, sometimes it's just a lot of induction noise. With this particular intake, I don't really get a whole lot of that. Like I said, we're going down the road here, actually down to 55 miles per hour now, but there's not a whole lot of sound in here. Now we're about to go up a hill, so the truck will drop down in a gear, and you hear a little bit of induction sound. It's not really anything huge. You can still probably hear me talking pretty clearly, but everything is really impressive here with this cold air intake. Now obviously this isn't for everybody. A lot of people think that a cold air intake really doesn't do anything, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But at least from an audio perspective, just how much you can hear driving the truck and whether or not it's annoying, it's really not. I've had this truck on the interstate a lot with the intake on, and it's really not a very noticeable difference at all. It's really just under hard acceleration or under full throttle that you get a lot of that noise. Now let's talk about performance here with the intake. Now, a lot of people, as I said, are not a huge fan of cold air intakes. They think it just makes a whole lot of noise and doesn't really do anything. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So I don't think you're ever going to add a cold air intake to your truck and be like, oh, I just gained 100 horsepower or anything like that. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. And maybe if you do an intake and an exhaust all the way back from the headers and do a tune, you may see some significant power differences, but I don't think you're ever just going to bolt on any modification and see a massive power gain. Now, with all that in mind, I do think the power comes on a little bit smoother. Now, before I installed the intake, it seems like when you went under kind of a heavy-footed maneuver, meaning like the truck would shift down and try to speed up really hard, under full acceleration or anything like that, I felt like the power kind of hit you all at one time. Instead of kind of being gradually building power like a lot of other vehicles. Now, with the intake installed, it seems to do that a little bit more. It seems like the shifts are a little bit smoother when you are trying to accelerate quickly, and it may make a little bit more power. Now, obviously, the sound does add to the whole theater of the experience, and a lot of the added power may actually be due to just your senses kind of fooling you a little bit, but I don't think there's any way that I have less power. I have heard a little bit of that in the past. Your engine does need a certain amount of back pressure, a certain amount of resistance to run up to optimal power and everything like that. I really don't think that this is detracting from that a whole lot, and like I said, I don't think I'm losing power at all. There might be a little bit of gain, but it does seem to be a little bit smoother at the very least. Now, another thing that I noticed is actually on the interstate, I take the same route on 81 every morning to get to work and back home, and it seems like the truck is holding its gear a little bit longer. I know a lot of people, when these trucks first came out, were hitting slight inclines, and the truck was dropping from the 6th overdrive gear down into the 5th gear, and that really caused a lot of problems for some people trying to get used to that and everything else, and some people were very unhappy with the truck. After I installed the cold air intake by K&N here, it seems like the truck does hold gears a little bit longer, and also when you start going up the hill, the truck shifts down occasionally. Then when you crest the hill, it shifts back down into 6th gear immediately. There's no delay there. A lot of times before I installed the intake, I would be going uphill, I would crest the hill and start flattening off, and it would still be in that lower gear. It would not shift back to the higher, 6th gear, whatever it was. And with the intake, it seems to shift back down a lot quicker. So this is just my experience. Obviously, I would love to hear what you all think. If you do have a cold air intake installed on your truck, please leave all your thoughts in the comments below. But honestly, I'm really impressed with it, and I think I'm definitely going to leave it on here for at least a little bit longer. So here's the average fuel economy for the vehicle. I did reset this after I got the K&N cold air intake, and if you look back at the past video, you will have seen that I was averaging somewhere around 21.4 miles to the gallon. Now here with the cold air intake installed, we're currently reading 21.8. It actually just went down as I was sitting here filming this. It was up at 21.9, but I have seen all the way up to 22.2 here on the average fuel economy readout. And so this pretty much adds to the fact that a cold air intake, at least in some cases, can improve your fuel economy. Now, this isn't a huge increase. It's somewhere between 0.5 miles to the gallon and all the way up to 1 mile to the gallon. But overall, it is an increase, and ultimately, it does consume less fuel with the cold air intake installed. Here's another look at the cold air intake. Again, this is the Blackhawk series, so you do get the black resonator tube and the black filter, and I think it has a really nice look here in the truck. Now, if the blackout thing is not your thing, you can get chrome resonator tubes with red filters and pretty much any other color that you could possibly want here with K&N. So in terms of news and other activities that we've been getting into recently, Chad and I have been very, very busy. We're about to go back to school here in about a week or so, and we're trying to get everything sorted out and everything else before we go back down. So you may have noticed that a few days ago, actually on Sunday, we did post our adventure of going up to Flagpole in the Land Cruiser. If you haven't seen that already, I would certainly recommend you checking that out. It's really interesting to see how a 1991 Toyota SUV compares to our new trucks and more modern 4Runners and everything else out there on the trails. And we had a really great time out there with all of our friends. So again, if you haven't seen that already, please do check that out, and let us know what you think about that series. We're having a great time there with our project vehicle, and we'd love to know what you all think. Also, in other manufacturer news, there are some pretty interesting stories this week. So we've been hearing more and more about the 2019, or what we're calling the 2019 Ram trucks. The half-ton in particular is going to get an update that year and go to the all-new platform. It's not just a facelift, it is a fully updated truck at that point. And it seems like some spy photographers have been able to get out there and actually catch one testing while it was stopped, and they were able to catch up to it and stick a magnet to it like they did the half-ton Silverado that had been testing, that's coming out here before too long as well. And what they found is it is still using a steel body. It is not aluminum yet, so Ford will be the only one using aluminum. However, Ram engineers have said that they do plan on using aluminum in some areas of the vehicle, like maybe the tailgate, the hood, and other things, but in terms of the bed and the cab and everything else, it will remain steel. So a really interesting idea there. And again, it seems like the Silverado will be sticking with steel as well, except for maybe some smaller components, but certainly interesting there, and I'm curious to see what makes of that. Now, with other Chevrolet news now, the Chevrolet Colorado ZR2 seems to be really hitting the market there with a big splash. It is a very, very capable mid-size off-road truck. Now, to prove this, GM is going to take what they're calling a street legal ZR2 out to the Vegas to Reno off-road race there out west in the United States, and they will be running that truck again in street legal form. So they're not going to be stripping it out and making it a full, off-road truck or anything like that. It will, I'm sure, not be exactly what you can go and buy at a dealer, but they just want to prove exactly how capable that truck is in mostly stock form. You know, maybe some different tires, maybe some roll cage or something like that, but is a mostly stock truck. So it'll be interesting to see what makes of that out there in the desert. Now, with the Colorado ZR2 selling and being as popular as it is, a lot of people, GM Authority Online particular, is saying that there may be a Silverado ZR2. Now, they claim to have caught spot shots of this. They don't actually show any spot shots of this, so I'm a little bit confused by that. So we'll call it a rumor at best right now, but it is a really interesting idea. You know, Ram has the Rebel and the Power Wagon, depending on how big of a truck you want. Ford obviously has Ford has the Raptor, Toyota has the TRD Pro, but GM really doesn't have anything. You know, they have the Z71 models, which really is not too much of an off-road truck. However, I do know when you get the Z71 with the Midnight Edition, you can spec one of those trucks to have Duratrack tires, Goodyear Duratracks from the factory, but they really don't have a pure off-road truck there for GM. So I think if they would make, again, what is being rumored as a Silverado ZR2, I think that could be a really interesting offering for them and help keep them competitive there in the market. Now, for our last story this week, it comes back to the Ford Ranger. We've been talking about the new Ford Ranger that hopefully will be coming to the States here within the next couple of years, and how there may be a Raptor variant of that, you know, to compete with the Colorado ZR2, the TRD Pro, and the like. But a more normal Ranger has been spied, you know, not with the Raptor treatment, just the more you know, basic truck, and it actually is in a single cab variant. Now, you may have realized that with the third generation Tacomas, you actually cannot get a single cab. I believe the Colorado for General Motors may be able to get a Colorado maybe in its most basic work truck trim. However, I've never seen one, so I can't really vouch for that. But I think it is really interesting that Ford is out testing one of these in a single cab variant. Now, whether we'll actually get that single cab variant or whether it will be sent to other markets, you know, in South America or Africa or, you know, wherever else they sell these things, it remains to be seen. But a really interesting idea there from Ford that at least they're testing this great truck. We'll get one more acceleration here with this cold air intake. This is about half throttle here. So we got it up to about 4,000 RPMs there, and then we're back down into 6th gear now, and you can barely hear it. So personally, I don't find it too annoying. I actually really like the sound. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about this, but I'm really happy. It is my truck, and I'm really happy with the state it's in, and I'd love to know what you all think in the comments below. But thank you all very much for watching. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time.